What is going on, NFL Nation and fans all over? How are you doing? It's the Hurry Up Live featuring my man Jeffy T, my co-host on Premium Takes. I know we didn't do Premium Takes last night, so we thought we'd give you the hurry up right now, just to give you our thoughts on mostly the NFL. Normally, Premium Takes, we talk about everything, but this is going to be particularly the NFL and what we're hearing. Strictly other teams outside of the NFC East, because I want you to tune into that show on Wednesday with Mac the Giant fan and I and our NFC East roundup. But for now, let me introduce my featured guest, Jeff. How are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm doing very well. How's everybody else doing today? It's friggin' hot as hell here in New Jersey, but otherwise that, we're all fired up. There's a nice little keyword into it for the New York Giants' first preseason NFL game this coming Thursday against the New England Patriots, and we're all just ready to kick that ball off and ready for some New York Giants football.
It's funny because the NFL played the Hall of Fame game last week against Jags Raiders. You got a chance to see actual football. I know people were like, "Oh, I'm not watching that crap," dude. It was great to see helmets not named USFL or not named Canadian Football League. I'm so hungry for football. I watched the Toronto Argonauts versus the Saskatchewan Stampeders or something like that the other day. That's how hungry I am for football. It was good to see helmets that I recognized. But let's get into what's going to happen this Thursday. But before we do that, I know, Jeff, you know that I went to Fan Fest this past Friday at Giant Camp. Let me tell you, I want to first say thank you to The Miz. If you're out there listening, thank you so much for getting me a ticket through the Entertainer. Thank you so much for giving us fans a ticket. And I just want to say thank you to the hosts, Justin Pennick and Bobby Skinner of Talking Giants and License Plate Guy, for going out there and hosting a fantastic event with the fans. I recommend you guys go at least once. I met some great guys out there. I met the Hub. I met the Pest. And I sat with Alex from Big Blue in the Bronx. By the way, he's from Brooklyn, so don't let that name fool you. I'm sorry, Big Blue in the Bronx. He's a great guy. Thank you so much for sitting with me and dealing with my craziness as we were yelling at practice. But with that being said, let me give you a few nuggets that we can talk about going forward. First off, I know a lot of people said that they didn't show much. Well, that means to me that you need to be crisp on what you showed. And offensively, overall, the offense was not good. Not just Daniel Jones, the entire offense was putrid. It wasn't the crispness. Yeah, it had 18 plays, but there was a couple sacks that could happen in there. The good thing was no turnovers by the first team unit. That's a good sign. The other good sign is that they had decent run blocking and decent run fits. And Saquon Barkley, let me tell you, Jeff, this guy looks ready. Absolutely ready. He was there, spry, looking like old Saquon. Like if the Giants don't win, it won't be because Saquon Barkley is having a bad year. You know what I mean? It'll be because they're just a bad team. Now let's do it position by position. I know everyone wants to know about Daniel Jones, so here it is. Daniel Jones looked average. I'm not going to badmouth the guy. He looked average. That's what I saw out of practice. He didn't look anything more than what he did. Okay, I'm not getting on the Daniel Jones Super Bowl train. I'm not going to Daniel Jones going to do this. He's an average quarterback. That's what he looked like on Friday. He did get a little better in the second drive that he had. They had 2 drives by the first team offense. One was like 12 plays. The last one was like 18 plays. He did happen to throw to Andre Miller. But you saw some good things, or you saw some bad things as well. Like there was a flare out pass to Daniel Bellinger that clearly he needs to hit. You can't have that guy, first off, reach for the stars to try to catch your football, and then second off, while he's reaching for the stars, you overthrow him. You know what I mean? Like you can't do that. Those are throws that are unacceptable. He did have some decent throws. They didn't do anything deep with the first team. I think because they're not gearing them up yet for anything that, 20,000 fans in the stands. They don't want anyone revealing anything. However, Tyrod Taylor with the second team did move the football up and down the field. A couple players I want to touch on, and then we can get into some guys we might want to highlight during the game. Andre Miller, he's getting a lot of burn, man. He's getting a lot of burn with the first team. Not like he's moved up the ranks. For all you Ricky Seals-Jones fans, he's gone. Okay, he's not even practiced yet. And if he doesn't play the first preseason game on Thursday night, you can kiss his ass goodbye, because I don't know what's wrong with him. They said an unknown injury, but a guy like Andre Miller who's coming out If you guys don't know him, University of Maine, go look him up. Jeff, what are your thoughts on Andre Miller and the developments of him taking over some first team reps?
I mean, I like what I hear so far from Andre Miller, and he seems like that type of tight end.
NYG22, what's good, man?
What's going on, NYG22? He sounds like that good, like, move tight end that can be a guy you can line up in the seams and can be able to take advantage of over in the middle. So, I mean, I love what I'm hearing. I actually would rather see these younger players like an Andre Miller, or I don't even know how Austin Allen has been looking too, but
he's not getting as much burn as Andre Miller. Andre Miller is all over the place. I will tell you this though, Jeff, the tight end position is terrible right now.
Oh yeah, I mean it's no question why somebody like Daniel Bellinger is clearly running away from that job and hiding. I mean he's clearly the best tight end out of everybody in that group, but I mean overall his skill set is probably going to be the one that the New York Giants are going to take advantage of the most because he's obviously the most complete out of everybody. He's a very good blocker. I mean, we saw some of the blocks that he made when he was trying to go against Kayvon Thibodeau. He actually held his own pretty well in practice. And, I mean, the guy's actually done pretty well. He's had good he has good hands in practice. So, I mean, I'm actually happy to hear about Andre Miller doing well in camp because we want to see these young guys be able to make their mark in practice. And the same thing with the Yusef Corker. And actually, I like Trenton Thompson, too, who's actually probably a pretty good, solid undrafted free agent in terms of his coverage skills. So, I mean, him and Yusef Corker have a different skill set. And, I mean, they're taking advantage of Dane Belton being out right now with a broken collarbone. And actually good news that Belton might be back sooner rather than later because he's been out of a sling. So, hopefully that Belton can make it back soon. But, I mean, I like what I'm hearing from Josh Azudu, too. And I think Azudu as well could be a guy that could sneak up and possibly win a role with this offensive line going to the future because – the Giants' run blocking seems to be like way ahead of their pass blocking, and I mean that's something you really love to hear is that their run blocking is doing pretty well.
I will say this: their depth on the offensive line is atrocious. They just signed a guy named Eric Smith. Used to play for the Jets. Was with the Giants last year. Developmental tackle probably doesn't make it out, but they need 90 guys for the roster. And in this point, I don't know exactly. I'll have to look up when the exact cut down date is to 75. But Andre Miller, I wouldn't be surprised if you see him on the opening day roster right now. Andre Miller is he's moving up the ranks. I feel Daniel Bellinger is going to be the default starter, the de facto starter, whether or not he does well. We're going to have to deal with his growing pains. But as a move tight end, this is what you wanted Evan Ingram to be. This is the type of tight end you wanted Evan Ingram to be. And this guy is a more willing blocker, like you said.
He's a former wide receiver. Also, with Andre Miller, he's a former wide receiver, so he knows how to, run routes from having the experience as a wide receiver before.
But the best part is he's a willing blocker. It's not like he's a terrible blocker. They're saying that he's doing enough to get by and make the block. So if he can do that, and mind you, I think they might keep him as a fullback, in an H-back role. So technically he will be a tight end, but you could keep, let's say, Bellinger, right now Aiken, and you can keep Andre Miller. But if you wanted to go a fourth tight end and keep Andre Allen because you're afraid that he's going to be taken from waivers or anything like that, because remember, when you cut players, they go through the waiver system. Yeah. Right. And then if you decide that you don't want him on the roster, you can't sign him to the practice squad till he clears waivers. So if you like, let's say Austin Allen, he produces through the preseason, and you like Andre Miller and Jeremiah Hall, these are the two names you keep an eye out. I heard Jeremiah Hall, though, is kind of tentative when it comes to the blocking, and he's not doing as well as they had hoped. So look out for a guy like that. You bring up a great guy on defense, Yusef Corker, but I want to still stick on the offensive side of the ball. Another guy that I saw in practice that people need to kind of pump the brakes on, and that is Evan Neal. I love Evan Neal, but he's going to have some growing pains. He's apparently learning a new technique. He's going up against O'Shane Zimenez and getting trounced. Kayvon Thibodeau, we'll get to him in a minute, is lights out. But Evan Neal, I just want to tell people this. Don't be alarmed if that in the first game or two he struggles out the gate, and then by week 6, 7, you're going to start to see the Evan Neal that we all hoped and envisioned. Remember, it's going to take time. Game reps. Practice can only do so much for you. Mm-hmm. And that's why I want to see. Yes.
Do you remember a couple of years ago when everybody was panicking about Andrew Thomas when he got off to a slow start and everybody thought that we made the wrong pick there?
He's the next guy.
Remember, though, the fan base was going nuts, like, oh, Andrew Thomas sucks. He can't get the job done.
Eric Flowers.
Next Eric Flowers. Like, why did we pick this guy? And now
Right.
he's only turned into probably one of the best young left tackles right now in the
Well,
league
if
if
you
he
want
remains
to,
healthy.
if you want to talk about it, he probably is the best out of the four right now, right? You know, I mean, Tristan Wirfs, yeah, he won a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. I mean, not Wirfs.
I probably like. I think Wirfs and Thomas are probably around the best because Wirfs is
Right,
very good
right.
too, even though he's a right tackle. But Wirfs is
Jared-
tops the league.
But see, that's what I'm saying. Wirfs is a right tackle. Thomas is a left tackle. More valuable there. Jedrick Willis is a left tackle, but he plays for the Browns. He's doing okay as well. And then you have Mekhi Becton, who, you know, if you're a Jet fan, or if you talk to Miz, he's a fat slob. But, you know, for me, I look at it like this. I look at I'll never forget the day Andrew Thomas was drafted because I loved the pick. I thought he was the best tackle out of the group. I thought he had the highest ceiling, or whatever the hell that shit is that they say, the lowest floor, highest ceiling, whatever that damn terminology.
I think he had the highest floor and maybe like a good ceiling, but they thought that other players had a higher ceiling. That were like in terms of bust rate, Thomas was probably the lowest of the bust rate.
Exactly, but to me, it's like, all right, I got my tackle of the future. You know, Evan Neal is a better overall, you know, talent-wise than him because he went to Alabama. But we're picking apples and oranges here because they're both going to be good players.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The thing about Andrew Thomas, though, I got a text from a friend and he goes, "Oh, the Giants picked the fourth best tackle." I'm like, "How do you know?" He's like, "Well, that's what it said on the national media." I said, "Did you study Andrew Thomas?" He goes, "No." I said, "Did you look at his tape?" He said, "No." I said, "Then you don't know what you're talking about." Because
that's the funny thing about it, Adam. You notice a lot of people are like judging some of these players and some of these teams before we've even taken a snap in the NFL yet.
Right.
And we're already like saying this person sucks and this person's great. Remember everybody was getting on Jamar Chase last year because he was dropping the ball every single second in practice? Like, oh, the guy's going to suck. He's going to be terrible. And all the guy did was go out there and have one of the best rookie seasons for a wide receiver in the past 5-10 years.
In the history, almost the history of the game. We're talking about Randy Moss and a couple other guys on that list. And so for me, it's like, this is why I don't take practice into consideration, because it's practice. People don't realize, if you played football, have you played football, Jeff? I don't know your history.
No, I've only played like, you know, football with friends and stuff, never professionally.
Okay. I've never played professionally. I played in high school and I tried to play at college, but I went to college. I laughed my way out of the Division III program because they were like, "Oh, we have to have recruits." I'm like, "You're Division III. I should be able to walk on," but that's here nor there. I went to Monmouth and I was going to go. They showed me the football program. The guy's neck was the size of my thigh. I said, "Yeah, I don't think I'm going to play football here at Monmouth University." But anyways, my point is if you've done practice with any of your players, you tend to know their tendencies. Okay, I know for a fact that when I played football, a lot of guys were practice players. They picked on guys like me who didn't really like, I didn't really like contact, is that we knew what practice was, right? And we wanted to get the job done. But come game day, I was jacked through the roof, ready to go. May not have been the best player on my team, but hey, I was ready to go run through a wall for people. But then they didn't show up on game day. But my point here is, if you deal with a guy day in and day out of camp, you understand their tendencies. Right? So, yeah, you know what Kayvon Thibodeau is going to do. You know what Ojulari might do. You know what Ellerson Smith might be, because you're there with them day in and day out. It's like knowing your spouse, you know what I'm saying, or a good friend of yours, or your cousin or your family member. That's what it's like. It's when you deal with other people, i.e. the Titans, who don't know you, who you don't know how they're going to set up the moves, right? So it's like if you spar with somebody all day, every day, and you don't change it up, right? And you go into the fight and the guy decides he's going to be a southpaw and you only trained regular fighting stance, you might get thrown off a bit. That's how the NFL is. That's what practice is. That's why you have to take practice with a grain of salt. I know people are like, "Oh, well, Adam, it's vanilla." Yes, it's vanilla, but you need to be crisp on that vanilla. You need to see things that, you know, give you hope. With Daniel Jones on Friday, I did not get hope. With the offensive line, I'm like, we're going to have some struggles out the gate if we don't get this thing right. And even the coach is saying we've got a lot of work to do. So I just want people to be aware that I'm not trying to poo-poo this team. I think they're going to have a good, fun season. I don't think they're going to win more than 7, possibly 8 games max in this season. But they're going to be a better offense to watch. It won't be because of lack of trying for them to not do well. It'll be because, you know, they just friggin' stink. Like that's
yeah.
You know,
it's
that's
not
it.
good enough to play against opponents.
Why did they show Josh Luck? Why did they show Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock last year? Those aren't the Teddy Bridgewater ain't on Denver. Man, somebody's getting fired on NFL Network. Boy. But anyways,
showing plays from last year when they were both on the Broncos.
Anyways, point is, be excited, but just know with a grain of salt. So Evan Neal, you got to get better. You have training camp to do it, but I think it's going to be a rough go to start the season for him. And please don't tell me he's going to be Eric Flowers. I don't want to hear that. I really don't. I really don't.
I have a question, Adam. In terms of Evan Neal, was it true that he struggles a little bit when it comes to the outside pass rush, like speed rushers that try to go on the outside of him, where he does better when they try to go inside him?
Well, actually, the inside rush has been hurting him. The outside, not so much. But Kayvon Thibodeau has beaten him, and he did hold. But listen, Jeff, I'm going to step away real quick to help out somebody here. You take the show over real quick and give your thoughts on where you think Saquon Barkley will land stat-wise.
I think when it comes to Saquon Barkley and his stat-wise, there's no reason to think that this guy can't approach – maybe not exactly 2,000 yards like he did in 2018. That might be just expecting a whole lot more and putting too much on his shoulders. But there's no reason to think with what the offense is going to be built around, how they're going to feature Saquon Barkley in this offense going forward, and the fact that he's now his second year removed from an ACL tear, that I think Saquon Barkley could get close to maybe around 1,500, 1,500 to at least 1,800 yards total in terms of the rushing and receiving game, because the one thing I love hearing right now at camp is that Saquon Barkley is becoming more of a north-south runner again, that he's not afraid to hit the hole right up the middle. And that's the one thing that you needed for Saquon Barkley, is you need this guy to be able to run up the middle as a running back. He can't dance at the line anymore, because if you dance too much, you're going to give an opportunity for the defensive lineman and the linebacker to come up and try to get a sack on him. So Saquon Barkley has got to continue to run up the middle, which I love hearing. That's exactly what he's doing right now in camp.
Let's see.
And I think
Let's see what that happens come game time, right? Because
he's got to not be afraid. He's got to make sure, when the hole is there in front of him, he's got to make sure he powers through and not try to dance and make the spectacular move on the outside, because that's been his problem. He's been dancing too much at the line. When the hole is there, explode up the middle. The guy's big enough. Saquon Barkley's built like a Greek god. Shout out to AK for saying that all the time, AK Eagles. But Saquon Barkley has the size and the build where he can be a pretty solid north-south runner. He's just got to, trust in that knee, that he's 100% back and he's not afraid to take the hits. And he's got to make sure that when the hole is there, bust right up the middle and get those big gains up the middle, because he's done it before.
And I think the weakness of the offensive line, unfortunately, will be Evan Neal and then the interior guys. Feliciano has been doing okay, which, by the way, the Giants are hiding something with Feliciano, because that guy had dehydration, was out for a week. Give me a break. All right? Just tell us he had –
I'm worried about the interior offensive line. I got to be honest. Especially rotating a bunch of centers right now. You want to have consistency at the center position. You want to have one guy that can consistently in the first team take snaps. And they've got 3 or 4 guys. Oh, yeah. Jamil Douglas is not getting me excited. I'm not happy about Max Garcia. I'm not happy about the depth right now. The scary part isn't about it, Adam. The one guy I actually trust as depth in the interior offensive line, it shouldn't be this case, is Josh Zudu. And I don't even know what the hell the kid is, but I actually trust him the most of everybody.
And I think
don't trust anybody else.
I think that's the scariest thing you just said, because if we're trusting a rookie, who, by the way, they lost Marcus McKenneth for the season with
I feel terrible for that kid.
Torn ACL, which sucks because it was at practice. It's not like in a game. And that's what that's what I'm worried about this game, right? Is on Thursday, I don't care what anybody says. Bill Belichick's going to have all 3 phases of that team ready. First, second, third team. Okay, this is going to be a great game to see the second team O-line. Actually, the first team, they need a couple series. Daniel Jones, you need series, bro. You need series. Okay, this is why you need series, because last year Joe Judge was an idiot and was like, "Oh, you know what? Blah 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 blah. We'll just not play anybody.
That was stupid when he did
the
that.
Scrimmages were great. Blah blah blah." Okay, well, guess what? Andrew Thomas was getting beat left and right. The world was coming to an end. But you put him in the game, but you don't put your quarterback, who needed the reps at your position to get better. You didn't put him in the game. So Dayball already off to a good start. Let's see what happens. I'm not going to take too much out of the preseason in terms of the first team. However, the second game and the third game is what I'm really going to look at. But let's move on to some other players that I'm interested in on Thursday, and then we can talk about maybe just the overall landscape of the NFL going into the first preseason weekend, which, by the way, is being promoted the hell out of by NFL Network. You can catch the Giants on NFL Network, or if you're in the new tri-state area, probably on NBC of some sort. Bob Pop and Carl Banks will probably be giving you the call in the booth, and you'll have the Giant crew, the Giant Big Blue Kickoff Live crew in the radio booth. And then you will have people streaming the game, not my ass. I need to be there to be able to analyze it for you. I need my room, but maybe if you're lucky, one day I will do a play-by-play of the Giant preseason game. I'm still thinking about it. I want to get a crew together. Maybe me, you, and Mac the Giant Fan. We can be Al Michaels, Dan Dierdorf, and Frank Gifford on the play-by-play. Because when we do the play-by-play, there will be no interruptions. There'll be one guy who's doing the actual commentating. The other two guys will comment on the play or plays as such, like a regular broadcast. People, you'll be allowed to interact with us in the chat. Remember, this is a possibility. Haven't even asked these guys if they want to do it yet, and I'm not even sure if I want to do it yet, but I'm just throwing the idea out there that if it does happen, we're going to do this like the Monday Night Football crew and get you guys really ready to go. Jeff, I'll talk to you offline about that a little bit later.
No doubt about it. I'd be excited to do something like that. Just be able to cover some NFL games, even if it's preseason mandated, and just see how our team looks in terms of.
I think the one game, if I do it, it'll be in 3 weeks. It'll be Jet Giants on Sunday. I think it's Sunday afternoon, so we could just put the game on, and it's my game will be delayed. It might not be delayed with you, but we could just talk about it play by play. Or what we would have to do, which might be easier, is like stream the game, and then like figure out how we can stream it and showcase it. We can't showcase it because it's NFL copyright, but figure out something, right? Because the problem I have with streaming games when you're not in the same room with somebody is the second delay, right? So if you're commenting on it and you see a play, someone's going to go like, oh, and then all of a sudden, your whole broadcast is thrown off. But we'll talk about that later. Anyways, I'm looking at it like this. I think the Giants, there's some guys I want to look at in this preseason. I want to see Yusuf Corker. He's got a big opportunity now that Dane Belton's gone, and there really is no depth at safety outside of Andrew Adams. I really want to see if he can get going. He got an interception in the game, which is great. I want to see Keelan Doss. Kid has been lighting up.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about Keelan Doss, that he's been a guy that's been playing very well in terms of. Has he been getting first team snaps?
He's moved up the ranks. He went from third team to second team. I remember I turned to Alex from Big Blue in the Bronx, who he was sitting next to me, and I turned to him. I go, number 5 is going to make the team. He's like, you think so? I said, number 5 will make the team. Number 5, Keelan Doss is going to make the team. Okay, he's going to be the 6th wide receiver. He's got that much talent. You don't want him to go away. He's already played. And if he shows out in preseason, which he's playing with Tyrod Taylor, so if he can get he had a catch in the end zone in practice that Tyrod just laced in there beautifully, diving catch. They called it incomplete. With practice you don't get much replay, and it was hard to watch YouTube and rewind it 3 or 4 times to see myself, but it was a good play, right? It was a good play. So, those are the things you're going to look for, guys like that. Andre Miller, I want to see him get some burn. Daniel Bellinger, Evan Neal. If I were the Giants, I'd play him at least a half. I know that you risk injury, but you need to play him at least a half.
I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear the injury stuff. You could get injured any time during the season. Any second. You got to play these guys, get them the reps.
Thank you, Jeff, for saying that, because I think a lot of people don't understand that. Like, if you're going to blow out your knee, you're going to blow out your knee whether it's week 1 or preseason. It's just going to that's just the fate that the football gods had for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, a guy like Marcus McKeithen, he could have blown out his knee on the first series during a preseason game. I mean, it can happen anytime. You don't know when somebody's going to get hurt. Exactly.
And you can't play like that because you play scared. You might as well not play at all, right?
No.
And you think a lot of these, and let's be honest, a lot of these things, like I've been telling people, is the body mechanics. When you practice on grass all day and then you go and you play on turf, that's what happens to your body, right? It's like basically running on a track or running on grass, all of a sudden high impact running, and then you do high impact running on concrete, and you wonder why your feet hurt. You know what I mean? It's just a different surface that you're running on, and there's not as much give. With grass, there's a little bit more give. With the dirt, and we can talk about the turf later on. We know the problems that the fucking field at MetLife Stadium has given us, and has given not only the Jets. I know the Jets lost a couple players as well, but let's keep it quickly on the game, and then we'll move to some other teams around the NFL. I know you got NFL Network on. They're showing the Panthers. They're showing of the Chargers. So I want to get into the NFL, not just strictly the Giants, because I know,
Was there any other players that you're interested in seeing, in the preseason as well, like any other players that doesn't have to be rookies?
They don't have to be rookies. I actually want to see. I want to see Darren Beavers. I've heard he's done well. Like the starters,
he's big.
The thing is, the way that he's moving is interesting. See, a lot of these guys, a lot of this team are young guys, right? You're not going to see Leo Williams till like basically, the last preseason game, and Dexter Lawrence. See those guys. I'd like to see what Jihad Ward can bring. They're saying he's doing okay in camp. He's not flashiest of guys, but he does his job. And he's a leader on the team. He was doing handstands the other day. But let's see.
Apparently, NYG, the Giants have actually not had that many injuries. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen the practice lately. And knock on wood. I don't know if you've seen the practice lately, but it looks like Azeez Ojulari and maybe even Sterling Shepard are not that far away. I mean, Shepard was making nice cuts when he was practicing. He's not that far off. And Azeez Ojulari is back on the field. So that's a great sign if you can get those two guys back on the field. And knock on wood, besides losing a couple of depth offensive linemen, which the last place we wanted to lose, injuries is offensive line. But we've actually been a pretty so far healthy team going into so far in training camp. But, you got to make sure it lasts throughout the season. I'm sorry. Continue what you were saying.
Tyrod Taylor got one single rep with the first team, and then Daniel Jones was subbed back in the following play. It's funny because
I saw one of my friends on Twitter was he starts saying all right, let the meltdown begin on Twitter with everybody starting to go off Tyrod Taylor needs to start, Daniel Jones needs to sit. You were just waiting for it to happen. But
wow, yeah. But we know that's good is that it says it here might have been a busted play, but Tyrod Taylor took one snap with the first team, and then it appeared they were conferring with Jones about something. Well, that tells me that he might have blown a coverage or something like that. Anyways, somebody said Darius Slayton belongs on the Giants roster. It's funny because Bobby Skinner was who I love. He basically said that Darius Slayton may not be on this team, and you know what? I wouldn't mind him being traded. He also brought up this scenario, which I would like to present to you.
This scares me too. I don't know if you heard about that, but Thomas is still a little bit gimpy on that ankle. He's having little issues with that ankle is a worry though, because he has had surgery on it twice.
Here's
one thing that worries me about Andrew Thomas.
Here's a bad play. Daniel Jones would have been sacked by Leonard Williams, finishes the play with an overthrow of Colin Johnson that's intercepted by Adoree Jackson.
How the hell do you overthrow a 6'6" receiver? Colin Johnson's 6'6".
I'm not saying anything else. I'm not saying anything else.
I'm just saying how. I don't know how you overthrow a 6'5", 6'6" receiver.
You got my opinion already on Daniel Jones. I'm not saying anything else. This is what I'm talking about. Okay, but my point is the thing I wanted to finish about that was look, I kind of lost my train of thought here. I'm sorry, Daniel Jones. But, we'll see what happens with these guys. Tibbs is having a monster camp, bro. I am so excited for this guy. He is going to be – you see that guy that's on my avatar right now, 5'6"? He's going to be probably up there with him. I'm not saying he's going to be Lawrence Taylor. Okay, people, before you –
I'd be happy if there's Michael Strahan, Justin Tuck, Osi Minora, one of those guys.
He's going to be in one, and let's not forget Azeez Ojulari.
He's going to be Azeez in there too.
Azeez is going to be the OC to the Justin Tuck. If Justin Tuck, if OC is to Justin Tuck, it's going to be Thibodeau is to Ojulari. I know I did those little SAT poems for you, but
that's what gives us so much optimism, Adam, is that defensive line. The defensive line can be really good this year if they reach their potential and stay healthy. That's a very strong front four.
Well, I think Leo Williams is going to have a great year. I think he's going to have at least.
Leo's going to be fantastic.
I think I'm going to go over under. He's going to have about 8 sacks.
I think Dexter Lawrence is going to be good too.
Well, yeah, he's playing in the position that we need him to play now. I don't know what the hell Patrick Graham was doing with him.
No.
You don't put a 340-pound guy on the edge, on the end of the line.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
But
you put a guy like Leo Williams who's 300 or 280 and a guy who can hold up. Like Chris Canny played nose tackle for us, right? He was a 3-4 defensive end, but he was kicked inside when he was brought here, right? And before our pass rush is back, baby, let's just let's get it out there. But I think that could be a factor going up against Tennessee. Now, I'm not going to say Tennessee is, not like that. And a lot of people are, going out on a limb and saying the Giants are going to beat Tennessee. I'm not saying they aren't, but I'm just going to say this. Championship pedigree that Tennessee Titans team has. Okay, they've been close to the dance the last few years. Those things just don't go away. Now I know their offensive line is going to be a shambles, but guess what they're going to do? They're going to turn that ball and give it to Mr. Henry, and they're going to be like, all right, they're going to try to dictate to the Giants and eliminate that pass rush. And let's hope these young guys, because this is where it gets tricky, right? A lot of young guys back there. This is where you blow an assignment, right? They line up in that formation. Already, you stack the 9 in the box, maybe even 10. Like, Henry's coming. They do play action fake. They do a little pop pass over the middle, and Robert Woods takes it for a long gain. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the type of thing you need to worry about when you play a team like Tennessee. They're not going to lie down for you. Their defense is ferocious, as well as our defense. Our defense is good, but we need to still stop the run. That was one of our weaknesses last year. And if we can't stop the run, we're gonna be in trouble. So that's what I would worry about. Pass rush, I'm not worried about it. I love what they're going to do with those. I think the reason this is so good is because we have the coordinator who I think can really make magic with these guys. Big Blue, City Empire.
What's up, Big Blue?
What's going on, man?
Now, here's another name that I'm going to throw out there, and apparently he's getting first-team snaps on the defensive line when they run a 3-4, and that's Jalen Holmes. I'm hearing like Jalen Holmes has actually been a pretty good player so far in camp too. Because when I see the 3-4 alignment, I see Dexter Lawrence in the middle, and I see Jalen Holmes opposite of Leonard Williams on the defensive line. So obviously he might be doing a pretty good job. And maybe if they run a 3-4 defense, Jalen Holmes could be the other guy on that defensive line. So another guy to even monitor that could be a sleeper to make this roster.
Yeah, I think he's going to make it. I think he has a good. When you're playing with the first team, it means a lot, right? Even though Jihad Ward's not out there and guys like that, in the 3-4, you need a guy who can play that end, and he has some experience.
We've been talking about this, NYG. I brought it up on one of my recent videos that like the run defense is going to be a key too, because if we can't stop the run, teams are going to be able to run all over, so they're going to be able to negate our pass rush. Because the Giants have to be able to stop the run, and it's only going to help out that pass rush going forward. And I don't know how the run defense has looked in camp. You obviously can't get a good gauge on until you see them in game. But
it's a two-way street, right? Because the run you're playing against the offense, and the offense is getting big gains, right? But the bad news is they're getting big gains against our defense, right? So it's like it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, because hey, yeah, we're doing great, but now our defense is struggling against our O-line, and it's good because we want our O-line to do well, but it's bad because we don't want to see our defense have some trouble against what I would call right now an average O-line. Okay, and that's what it's going to be. I hate to tell people this. We're going to have an average team. Does that mean we're going to be not have some upset games where we could beat the Tennessee Titans and things like that? That's one of those things. You know what I mean? Like that's what we're doing.
Yeah, we could run into some of those wins. You never know. Maybe we just have ourselves a good put-together game offensively and defensively, and maybe we create some turnovers, have some big plays, and we have an upset. It happens all the time in the NFL. But, yeah, I think the team is going to be it can't be any worse than last year. I think they'll be a solid team, and I mean, you said it before. You think they're going to be a 7-8 win team. I put it as their floor as 6 wins, and if everything somehow breaks right with this team, where they stay healthy, guys that haven't produced all of a sudden start producing, they could be a 9 and potentially I could even go as far as a 10-win team because they do have talent. But I think that 7 to 8, maybe 9 wins is probably around the area that you're looking for with the New York Giants this year.
And that's
with
pretty
7
good.
or 8 being the latter.
Considering
I'll
what
take
we
it.
came from. Considering what we came from. Because I think this is what's going to happen with the Giants season. Right? They're going to be in the mix up until about Thanksgiving, and that's where I think the wheels fall off the bus a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Because after the Thanksgiving game, and we can go over the schedule just so you guys can have a reference of what I'm talking about, is that I think the Giants can go roughly 3-5, 4-4 in the first 8. Not saying that will happen because I'm not overlooking any opponent. I'm just saying if things break right, that's what you want.
Well, that's the thing that's frustrating me so much is that the scheduling. When I see, I'm starting to be like how you were earlier, Adam, when people are saying that the schedule is soft. How do you know?
Yeah, you don't know. You don't know who's going to be in the lineup. You know what I mean? Like,
And you don't
for
know
example,
what team's going to be good or not.
we can go into the game October 9th against the Packers in London, and Daniel Jones could be out because, I don't know, he has mono or some shit. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
Full strength. Like, we're going to the Cowboy game. How do we know what they're going to be like? I mean, the Giants have not played well on primetime games in the history of my lifetime. Okay? Yeah. And, so you want me to then believe that they're going to go in and beat the Cowboys at home, who could be 0-2, scraping and clawing for their season? It's one of those things where the Panthers, if Baker Mayfield starts, that brings that team higher up on the, list. And this is a team that we think, is a 50-50 game. Now, I don't know.
On offense too.
After watching NFL Network, not going to lie to you, none of these teams I see on the schedule that are easy are going to be easy. The Lions look like they're headed in the right direction. The Texans, they seem like they're headed in the right direction. The Jaguars, they have a coach that's competent enough now. It's not going to be out clubbing with the
Lawrence can take a big step forward too.
Right. The only team that I really see, the 2 teams I see on the schedule in October that I think are in complete disarray are the Chicago Bears and the Seattle Seahawks. Right.
Seattle still worries me a little bit because they have those 2 explosive wide receivers, and our weakness is our secondary. But I think that we should still be able to win that game.
I hear you.
But I mean, you just said it right there too. I mean, the fact that who knows if Detroit all of a sudden puts it together, Dan Campbell's message gets out, Aiden Hutchinson becomes a great rookie when it comes to this season. Goff isn't not that horrible, and they have good playmakers all the time. Who knows? Detroit might put it together. Carolina's got a solid defense, so they have a good set of playmakers. If their quarterback just plays average or a little bit above average, they could be a pretty solid team. I like Davis Mills in Houston. Everything you're hearing about Damian Pierce is he's actually going to might be a pretty solid rookie running back. Nobody talks about Cooks. Cooks is just one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league. They have a solid offensive line. Their defense has some good young players. They could be a team that could, put it together. And I mean, as well as Jacksonville, all they needed really was a good coach that can get the most out of Trevor Lawrence. And I think Jacksonville started to build something. That what NYG said right here, that's what I want to see the most. Is I want to see how the Giants do against these divisional teams, and I want to see them actually put together better efforts against teams like Philadelphia and Dallas, and actually pull out some wins against these teams because we've owned Dallas for years before, but in the last 5-6 years, Dallas has owned us in terms of beating us, and we all know how Philadelphia has done against us. We have to start playing better against our divisional opponents and getting some victories in there.
Hey, Pat, how you doing? I agree to a certain extent that they need to beat this is why I tell people I'm not overlooking anybody because we went 1-5 in the division last year. 1-5. Let that sink in for a minute, people, because you need to do exactly what NYG22 said. Split 3-3. And then if you look at the schedule, I see 4 other games where the Giants should be favored or win. That leaves you at 7 wins, right? At 3-3. Okay? Now, if you're below 3-3 because you decide to overlook Washington and you decide to overlook, Philadelphia and you lose those games, well, you're in trouble. You know what I mean? Because the division is going to be up. I wouldn't say up for grabs, but it's going to be like a 3-team race all the way to the end, right? Probably depending on what Washington does or the Giants do, they could be one of those 3 teams. Somebody is not going to be able to keep up. I don't know who that's going to be, but regardless, it makes me angry when people say, oh, well, you could beat this team and that team. Exactly when we're talking about, look at what Jacksonville is doing. They have a competent coach now. Whether or not that leads to more wins, they won 3 games with a coach who basically didn't even care about them, right? Now you got a guy who turned around a Philadelphia program who made them Super Bowl contenders in year 2.
Yeah. I mean, Pat just says it right there. If we want to have any chance to have a decent season, we have to at least go 3-3 in this division or better. We can't be 2-4, 1-5, 0-6, or anything like that. We have to actually beat our divisional opponents. I don't want to hear about like Washington's easy or Daniel Jones. Washington's got some solid pieces on their team too. If Carson Wentz can at least be a decent quarterback, Washington's not that bad. I'm not going to say Washington's a bad team. They've got some players on that team.
And what I've been saying is 7 wins is not a bad season in terms of a rebuild. And this is what you want. You want to rebuild. You don't want fool's gold, because next year you're going to rely on a lot more younger players. You know what I mean? You're going to rely on a lot of other guys who are going to be young. So what you want to do is establish your team's identity, what you're going to be. Because what's happened with the Giants is from the last 3 coaching staffs is from year 1 to year 2, there's been the failure, right? It happened with McAdoo. Pat Shurmur got the raw deal just because of how it went down, right? And then you had this past season. Now, for me,
I agree, Pat.
yes, Wentz shows. Listen, Pat, we already previewed them on NFC's roundup. You'll hear about that this week. But we talk about it, Mac and I, about how this team, how everyone's overlooking Washington because they think they're just a doldrum, which, by the way, they beat us last year twice. They ended up 3rd place with a bunch of injuries and a quarterback who couldn't throw past 5 yards. Now you got a guy who can open up the offense for them, and their defense is still pretty solid. So all I'm saying is we can't overlook them. We just can't. We just can't. And for me,
watch out for Jahan Dotson. That team has not had a good number 2 receiver and given Terry McLaurin help. Watch out for Dotson. That's a rookie that you should look out for in that division. I think he's going to be pretty good to complement to McLaurin on that offense.
It seems like for me the Giants fan base is not necessarily in delusion, but they can't seem to agree on 2 things. They can't seem to agree that it's a rebuild, right? Mm-hmm. Many people want to go 11-6 and have these delusions of grandeur of being great. And then there are others who are like, let's put it together, right? The other thing is like Daniel Jones. It's like you either love him or hate him. And I think this offseason has been so polarizing because for me, I don't necessarily love or hate Daniel or anybody on this team. I just think when you have a new coaching staff, you just got to clean out everything that's a predominant position. That's quarterback, coach, GM. All 3 have to come in together. All 3 have to be on the same page. And all 3, like when you get a guy who's a 4th year in, unless you're like a Patrick Mahomes or a guy like that, it's hard to kind of deviate from your already habits. You've been in the league 4 years, right? You've been in the league 4 years. You have your habits and your ways of doing things. Listen, NYGJeffyT85, you cannot be sold on Wentz, but he has to be better than who? Daniel Jones and what? Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts? I mean, come on. The guy was almost an MVP last year. If you gave Carson Wentz 3,500 yards and 27 touchdowns, you put him on Washington, and they ended up winning 9 games last year, that would be crazy, right? I mean, that's what he did with an Indianapolis Colts team that was far better than Washington, okay? And while you may not like Washington, you can't 35 and 27 is pretty good, and 7 interceptions. Now, yes, did he have some boneheaded plays? That's Carson Wentz for you. That's the reason why he got kicked out of Philadelphia. But if Carson Wentz somehow figures it out, and let's be honest, we've seen quarterbacks like this have bounced around. He doesn't need to do much. It's like Baker Mayfield, okay, with Carolina. He doesn't have to do much for that team to be, an 8-win team. You know what I mean?
You got McCaffrey, you got DJ Moore, you got Terrace Marshall, you got Robbie Anderson, you got playmakers all over the place.
Right.
All Mayfield has to do is get the ball to his guys. It's the same thing for Wentz.
Exactly. And you don't and when you do that, it's a simplified version. Don't turn us over, put us in good down and distance, take what the defense gives you, right?
Mhm.
If Carson Wentz listens to Ron Rivera and doesn't play hero ball like he did last time, we won't have a problem. They won't have a problem. They will. As a matter of fact, they might be fighting for the NFC East if that happens.
I mean, the reason why I can't overlook Washington is because of that defensive line too. I mean, when they're all healthy, we're talking about our defensive line that could be really good. Look at Washington's. I mean, Montez Sweat was hurt a lot last year, but he's still a lot of people. So there's Washington fans that have said that they think that Montez Sweat is a better overall player than Chase Young, and I think Chase Young is still a pretty good player in this league, and I love their defensive tackles. I mean, Jonathan Allen doesn't get talked about enough as one of the best defensive tackles in football, and all that guy does is go out there and continue to get constant pressure up the middle as well as get sacks, and I think Deron Payne is really good too. So their defensive line is really solid, and I think their offensive line is not bad either. I think they got a pretty solid offensive line over there. I know they lost Brandon Sheriff, but I mean, they think they put together a pretty solid offensive line for Carson Wentz to operate, and don't forget about Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson is not a bad running back.
Let me break something down. And they got someone else at running back too. I forgot who it is, but
Robinson, I think, yeah.
Someone said something that was interesting from the Cincinnati Bengals. Sam Hubbard. He goes, "We as a defense play harder because we know that we have a quarterback that can change the dynamic of the game. So that makes us go extra hard." So what that tells me is like, all right, if this defense believes that they have a quarterback in Carson Wentz that can drive them down the field, well, guess what's going to happen? They might play a little harder. They might not be lackadaisical, knowing that Tyler Heineke can't be a competent quarterback, right? Knowing that Carson Wentz can win them some games. All right, and let's be honest. Again, I don't want to get too much into NFC East because I don't want you guys to not tune in on Wednesday night, but it's going to be fire anyways. But the first couple games for Washington are Jacksonville and then I forget who the other team is, and then they play the Eagles week 3. So they could easily be 2-0 headed into Philadelphia, right? So for me, it's like, well, and the Cowboys could be the opposite. The Cowboys could be 0-2 headed into the Giants. And everyone's like, well, the Giants need to be 1-1. Well, you bet. If you beat the Tennessee Titans, well, then you best beat Carolina. Because if you lose to the Titans, I could deal with losing to the Titans and then beating Carolina. But if you lose to the Titans and then overlook Carolina and you lose to them and you're 0-2 going into the Cowboy game, week 3, it's going to be a rough
No Giants fan in the past 10 years, I don't care who you are, you could be the most optimistic fan out there, should be overlooking any team in the NFL with the fact that we have the least amount of wins in the NFL tied with the Jets since I think 2011? No Giants fan should be overlooking any team. Any team in the NFL, remember, this is the thing that a lot of people forget. This is the National Football League. Every year, teams are not the same as they were the previous year. They're different. You could have a team that could come out of nowhere and be the Cincinnati Bengals and just put it all together one year and all of a sudden have this big-time season when you least expect it. The New York Giants should not be overlooking any team in the NFL. And I would go the same thing. No team in the NFL should be overlooking the New York Giants because you don't know.
I think you got to look at a guy's resume. You can't just look at it and say, well, he's not better. Resumes do matter, right? We're talking Carson Wentz turns the clock back a little bit. Huh?
No, that's what I said, Pat. I think that any team, including the Giants, shouldn't be overlooked. Any team in the NFL has a shot. It's a new season, new format. Anything can happen. The Giants could put it together this year if they stay healthy, and maybe like these players that have underachieved could put it together, and we can have ourselves a good season. We don't know. That's the reason why we're optimistic.
But the thing about it is that you don't think the Jaguars look at us on the schedule as well and go, well, we could beat them. We were one game worse than them. You don't think the Houston Texans, who, by the way, ended up with the same record as us, don't look at the Giants saying we have a chance to beat them. They're doing the same thing we're doing, right? Oh, we're going to beat this team. We're going to do this, and we're going to be one. Like, the NFL is built on parity. It's built on being able to go from worst to first quickly. However, you don't want to be one and done like the Cleveland Browns one year. You want to be able to sustain winning. I don't want to see 2016 over again to have 2017 happen. I want to see, a gradual build. Like, if you look at this right now, in my era of watching Giant football, and I didn't want to make this predominantly a Giant podcast, but it went down that road, right? This reminds me of the Jim Fossil era, right? We lost Dan Reeves as a coach, right, who didn't work out, went 6-10 and 5-11 his respective last 2 years, right? After basically making the playoffs in 93, basically kissing the playoffs in 94 with a quarterback named Dave Brown. Yes, health is going to be a main reason for most of our problems. That goes for anybody, but it's your depth that has to beat the depth of the other team, right? So, for example, if you lose Kadarius Toney, and they're now focusing on Robinson, right? And will your guy Keelan Doss step up? Will they be able to do what it needs to do? The Giants have had bad health, and let's be honest, they don't have much depth. But like I was saying before, we can't just overlook teams because they're on our schedule. We have to just take a game at a time. Jim Fossil era came in, right? He came in. Listen to this narrative, Jeff, and you tell me if it's not eerily similar. We had a quarterback from Duke who was much maligned, being here since 1992, right? They brought in Dan Reeves, who was a restrictor. He's coming in, and boom, Dave Brown will miraculously be this great quarterback because Jim Fossil made Boomer Esiason throw for 500 yards. Then you have a whole new regime change, and the young guys contributing like Sam Gar. They came out and they beat the Eagles, went 10-5-1. What happened the next 2 seasons? They were 7-9 and 8-8 respectively until they got Kerry Collins as their quarterback. And then in 2000, that's when they went 12-4. In 2001, they kind of had a Super Bowl hangover. And then 2002, again, because they had Kerry Collins, they went there. Right. And I feel like this is what Jim Fossil was: the breath of fresh air, the offensive mind. He's going to take the much maligned quarterback and change him. Hey, 4 years in, it's eerily similar to what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much, you're right on target with that. It's pretty much the same type of feeling. But I mean, I just think that a lot of the optimism you hear is because of the fact that it's a new regime coming in. And I mean, I do agree with Pat's point. I do think Richie James is actually a guy that you talked about Keelan Doss before. I've loved what I've seen from Richie James right now in camp. I think he could be. I would actually make this guy our primary kick returner and punt returner.
Well, the problem is the two guys in the front are C.J. Board and Darius Slayton, right? And then you've got to ask yourself this question: who is going to take the special team snaps?
Well, I think C.J. Board is going to – I would actually make C.J. Board, if you're going to get him for special teams, more of a coverage guy. And I think that Richie James, with his elusiveness and his speed, I think he'd be a great guy to put there as your punt returner and kick returner. And that way you can keep Kadarius Toney from potentially playing that role, and he can concentrate more on being an overall wide receiver, because we have to still remember Kadarius Toney is still learning how to become a full-fledged wide receiver in the NFL after playing quarterback and running back before. So I would actually hope that Richie James, if he makes the team, he becomes that guy that's our primary punt returner / kick returner. But
well, then that leaves so you let's say you put him in, right? Now that leaves Darius Slayton and C.J. Board, okay, for the final spot, and Keelan Doss. Now Keelan Doss, you probably can slip through the practice squad, so that means probably C.J. Board is the guy, right? So we'll see what happens going forward and when they come out in preseason. But I mean, for me, what I've seen is Richie James, the way he makes the teams as a punt returner, and I can see him doing it. But
maybe
we'll
Robinson's
see.
a punt returner. That's true. Maybe Robinson, they want to use him as a punt returner too. They could have James be the kick returner. Wandell.
You're not. You don't. You're not. He's going to have too much of a prominent role. The thing is, with Kadarius Toney, because you couldn't get him in the offense, I would have put him on special teams last year. I like Wandell Robinson. I want to put him in there, but if you're giving him more of a playbook, I'd like to scale that back. If he's getting less playbook and you want to get him on the field to have a playmaker on there, then that's what I'd say. But for me, Richie James, the only way he makes the team is really special teams. So, and God forbid an injury. But let's get to some of these other chats. At some point, the Giants are going to be competitive. There's always a team that goes from worst to first or the playoffs, so we can't just think every team that was bad last year will be this year. No, but there are a history of teams that are in rebuilding mode, such as the Lions. Do you think that team really is making a playoff run? No, but can they win 5 to 6 games? Yes. right? Do I think like what the Bengals did is a damn near anomaly. Usually, what happens is you go from 2 wins to about 8 wins, and maybe on the cuff of playoffs, and then this year you're excited to try to make that run. They did it because they got Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, and basically those two had an incredible season offensively, and their defense was no slouch either. Kept them in a lot of games, and they played best when it mattered most, right? So we'll see what happens this season. I'm just looking at it like just get better from last year. Don't put lofty. See, the thing is, when you put lofty goals on a team that's not supposed to make it there, you get disappointed when they don't make it there.
Yeah, I'm not. That's why I'm not putting, those types of expectations on this team. I'm gonna just go with. I think they're going to be a solid team this year that's rebuilding, and hopefully, I just want to see a core being put together. Jets, Broncos, Ravens, Jags, Giants, Seahawks, Lions, Panthers, all finished last. Who's got the best chance to win the division?
The
Uh,
Ravens have a chance, and the
Ravens,
Giants
and
could have a chance.
I'd say the
But again,
Broncos too.
yeah, I mean, well, the Broncos weren't that bad. But what I know you're trying to make the point of the Giants being competitive, and I agree with you, NYG22. But there's other teams on here like Minnesota, like the Colts, like the Titans that are a notch above us. And those are the games you want to see them do well in. All I'm saying is we play the Jags this year. When I'm going into a season, I'm sitting down and I have my team out there, and I'm Doug Peterson, and I'm looking at what I got. You think I'm going to tell my team we can't beat these guys?
You should. Every head coach should be able to go out there and say that you could be able to beat
I mean,
anybody on your schedule.
if the Giant fans have the fact that they can go out and beat the Titans, why don't the Jags have the same mindset of them going out and beating the Giants?
Mm-hmm. They should. They should have that mindset the whole entire time that they could. I will say, play calling will tell a story, because if you can run a good scheme and your play calling is up to par, it could help out your offense and your defense and get the most out of your players. That is true. Scheming, you can get the most.
Here's my thing about Kafka is about the situational awareness, because it affected Joe Judge last year. Okay, excuse me. It affected Joe Judge in certain games. Will it affect Kafka in certain games? Because here we are. I talk about the coaching staff all the time. I'm saying this is not Bill Parcells that we're talking about here. This is not the mid 90s here. You can't just come in and do everything. But it feels like the mid 90s because our defense is kind of, they have some established stars, right? So, like I said, Jim Fossil comes in, changes the offensive system, and away the Giants went, And for me, this here, I need to see what's going to happen come 3rd and 2. Come, they have the ball inside their own 40-yard line, on a 4th and 3. Do they call the play? Will they not call the play? How will it affect everything? The ebb and flow of the game. You know what I mean? Because the NFL, we've seen it. Bill Belichick went for it on 4th and 2, and it cost them a game against the Colts. Even the best of them have done it. I've watched old games where I'm watching Dick Vermeil back in the day when he was playing for the damn, when he's the coach of the Eagles in his football life, and he's going for it on 4th and 2 and having a meltdown because it didn't work, right? And I think we need to just see how it's going to play out. It's also – go ahead.
I was going to say, too, the only thing that you have to say about it, a good scheme as well, it could work, but the players actually have to execute the scheming.
There you go.
One thing that we've noticed a lot of these years is these Giants players have dropped the ball a ton, not run the right routes, not stayed on the field. So the scheming could be good and it could look good, but these players have got to go out there and execute the plays and make the plays when they're there, because you can have great schemes, but the players can't get the job done. What the hell do you have? So the players have got to get the job done and execute the scheme to perfection.
Right, like Daniel Jones is having a tough day at the office. And all I'm saying is to people is that we've got to take baby steps. See, the problem is the Giants have been so bad for so long that we just want instant credibility right away. And I love the direct. Like I keep telling people, I love the direction of Joe Shane. I love the direction of Brian Dable. However, Brian Dable hasn't coached a damn day in his life an NFL game as a head coach. Okay, never, not once, not ever. Okay, and that is a big deal. That is a really big deal because a guy like Mike Vrabel, who he's going up against game one, has had not only head coaching experience for the last few years, but winning head coaching experience. Okay. They've been in the playoffs for the last 3 or 4 years. They've been to the divisional championship rounds of the playoffs. They understand what it takes. They don't overlook certain things. They'll be ready for games. How will this team respond to the adversity when they have it? Right? Because again, a lot of the players that we have in prominent positions have done nothing but lose. Kenny Golladay, Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones have all been on losing squads. Yep. And that's another reason why sometimes when I tell you, hey, this is a guy like Barkley, I didn't care if he stayed or went. If he left, I would have been like, all right, we lost with you. We'll lose without you. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Thing.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? And a lot of this thing is I want the coach to have his guys. And this year is about finding that out. Like 1983 and 84 was for Bill Parcells. 83, Parcells kind of inherited the team and tried to do it whatever way. In 84, he was like, I'm doing it my way. You either hit the bricks or you follow me, right? So you'll find out who that is. That's what you want this year. Tom Coughlin did it in 2004, where he basically weeded out, like we got Barrett Green that year. We had Carlos Emmons that year. We got a bunch of retreads that year. And he basically weeded out the guys who didn't want to play for him. Oh, it's too hard, blah, blah, blah. Boom, weeded those guys out. Guess what, Ernie? Of course he did. He had a quarterback on the roster in Terry Collins who led them to the Super Bowl, who probably could have done it again. And he said, nope, I'm going to go with my guy. New coach, new quarterback. That's what they did. That's what they did.
Well, Adam, you just said it right there, and that's the one thing that a lot of Giants fans have to realize going into the season is that sure, we have talent right now, but the thing about it is this is all about an evaluation year about what guys that were not drafted and not signed, and we have made mention of this before. Whoever was not signed and not drafted by Joe Shane, you're getting evaluated. It doesn't matter if you're Daniel Jones or whoever the hell you are. You're getting evaluated this year on how you look out there, your play on the field, and pretty much your future with the New York Giants is going to be tied into that. So
nobody said we didn't have a chance. I'm just telling you that I don't think that it's just going to be a walk in the park like people think. That's all.
No, yeah, we'll definitely have a chance. Everybody has a chance every week. But, yeah, I'm just going into the season right now with, I want to see what these players that have been much maligned, hurt, underachieved. I want to see these guys that were not drafted by this regime or not signed by
stay healthy.
Regime go out there. I want to see them stay healthy, and I want to see them produce. And then maybe you never know. I mean, Tom Coughlin kept some of those guys that were from the previous regime. He kept Strahan. He kept Toomer.
Right.
He kept Barber for a little bit.
But hold on. Those guys were established. They did well, right? Like they let Jesse Armstead walk after a few years, right?
Yep.
Tiki Barber came in, and let's be real, he had a couple of 1,000-yard seasons, and Tom Coughlin had no running backs, so he kept him on the roster, right? He didn't know that in 2 years Barber was going to fail, but that's about it. Defensive, so he basically kept Barber, he basically kept Strahan, and then a couple other guys, right? Nothing crazy. It wasn't until 2005 where he brought in his cast of characters: Antonio Pierce, Plaxico Burress, Kareem McKenzie. It wasn't until, because guess what? They found Sean O'Hara that year. They found Osi Umenyiora the year before. They found
David Seibert back.
Right. Rich Seibert came back. Guys started to buy into their system, but they had to weed out guys like Carlos Emmons and Barrett Greens and all the idiots of the world that they needed to get rid of, because that's how it worked. And all I'm trying to say to you guys when I talk about a coaching regime and a regime change is that I don't like when you inherit players, because then everybody thinks, well, let's fix this guy. Let's fix him and make him what he is. Okay, so you fix him to make an average quarterback, and I'm still sitting there with a guy who is average, right? I mean, look at what the Giants did. Dave Brown was below average quarterback. They brought in Kerry Collins, who was arguably a better player, right? Hands down better player. Was the first overall pick in the 95 draft. And what did he do? He had a mishap in Carolina where he said something that was inappropriate, and I don't condone his behavior or whatever he did. I can't.
It's nice to see you too, Miz. It's nice to see you too. You know what? If Jones becomes a Pro Bowler this year, you will not hear a complaint out of anybody that's from the Giants fan base. We will welcome.
No, he's just stirring the pot. He just stirring. The pot.
I know he is. But
he was sitting next to me at the practice.
Oh, Becton got carted off.
Who?
Mackay said Mackay Becton got carried off the field. I don't know if he's just joking around or anything, but that's not a good sign for the Jets.
That doesn't affect us because it's not our team. So
yeah, I know.
Still, Daniel Jones carted off the field. I don't want to hear anything. But
nobody listen to what he just says. Throw it on Twitter. Be like, Adam wants to see Daniel Jones get caught. No. They'll throw that on Twitter. They'll hear what's like. Oh, you hear what this guy Adam Costa said? He wants to see Daniel Jones.
That would be great, right?
Yeah. I mean,
they would call me an asshole. That would be great.
Look at our buddy Ash Money. I mean, Ash Money puts out a tweet about a throw that was inaccurate, and the thing just blew up all over Twitter. Now you have freaking Chris Sims commenting on it about what just happened. So, I mean, you never know. But
listen, it looks like this. Okay, we're trying to do evaluations here, people. That's what this is. It's not about necessarily winning the game in terms of a record at the end of the day. Because if you do that particular, theory, you're gonna end up in 2 years firing Brian Dable, right? Because you're like, oh, we're going to the playoffs. When you said we're going to the playoffs, blah 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 blah. No, all you're doing.
He's right on that, but it's you could have a great system and you could have a great scheme.
Look.
Like I mentioned before, you have to execute.
Miz, it's not about you're not understanding what we're looking at. I don't care that they're not showing anything in the preseason. We know that. But how are you not executing the basic plays, and those plays you're struggling with? That's my point. Okay? It's the execution of the basic plays that you worked on. They didn't go into that scrimmage not knowing what they were doing. They didn't go into that scrimmage not knowing that they weren't practicing. This is what I'm talking about. I understand it's a new scheme and you don't want to show anything because you're at a fan practice. I get that. But at practice right now, how can you explain overthrowing a guy who's 6'5"? How do you explain that? Tell me. How do you explain 2 interceptions had by the quarterback today? Explain that. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that they're not hiding the thing. We know that. Nothing's going to happen on Thursday that's going to see. All I want to see is execution. I guess you guys aren't understanding how I'm evaluating this play because, it seems like when I bring up Daniel Jones or the evaluation of players, you go, well, it's this system or it's this. No, the individual player, the things that player has done, strength, weakness-wise, are what I'm looking at. Not whether or not the O-line sucks, because we already know that. But when the O-line is good, what is he doing?
Coaches can coach. Players got to execute. You can have a great scheme put together.
But man, I get it. But practice how you play, bro. Practice how you play. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, the players have to execute. It has to be.
Thank you.
I think the scheme will be better. I think the scheme will try to get the most out of these players, but the offensive and defensive players have to go out there and they have to get the job done. They gotta get it done when it's there.
But at the end of the day, I look at it like this, right? If you're having, like people say, it's a new system. They're struggling right now with a new system with communication. Again, you're playing at practice against guys who are playing you and trying to give you looks, right? But Tennessee is different. There's different when you play against a team that actually has a strategy and a game plan. Practice, you're working on certain situations. Those situations may or may not happen in the game. Those players may or may not be in the game. All right, football is so funny because when you look at how it's played, we think about practice all the time, but you can't emulate it the same way you did in the 80s and the 90s, right? Games are what I call controlled chaos because there's a lot going on. In practice, it's a more of a controlled environment because you can stop the play when you want to stop the play. You can continue to play even though the play technically would have been blown dead in a real game or whatnot. These are the things that happen in practice, don't happen in a game. And so in a game, when those things matter, and we've all been there, you've all been, if you've been in competition, there's guys who can't seem to hold their water, right? All of a sudden the game comes in, Justin Simmons is in the backfield, and Daniel Jones is panicking for his life. And instead of doing the smart play, he reverts back to his old ways and throws an interception that could be a pick six. Right? Those are the type of things that I'm looking at. I'm not worried that the offensive line is not great, right? Because we can make that excuse. It's what happens when your guy gets beat. How do you deal with the chaos? Are you sliding in the pocket to make a move? Are you pulling the ball down and running when you shouldn't? Because sometimes Daniel Jones does the uh-oh type of thing where the first time he gets intercepted, right? Or fumbles the football. The same situation happens later on in the game, and then he decides, maybe I'll slide here. I need to see that instinct on the first play, not on the second play after you've already made the blunder.
Yeah. You can't see that stuff a couple of times later. And I guess he's talking about Darnay Holmes, Miz.
Yes.
I like Darnay Holmes too. I think he's hasn't been used enough, and I think he's in the right defensive scheme. He's got to stay healthy, but I mean, he's had some nice plays in camp, but he's also going to get burned pretty often too. So I got to see more from Darnay Holmes before I just start 1,000% waving the pom-poms. He's going to have like a breakout year this year. But I think he's solid. I think he's good. I think he's solid.
I think he's the starting slot guy. But the guy I want to talk about on defense is Julian Love. He is going to be the unsung hero of the defense.
I'm so happy you said that. I agree so much with what you just said.
Because what happens is he was being used all over the field, and what happens is if a guy goes down, let's say Darnay Holmes, or God forbid a Robinson, Aaron Robinson. We have a lot of Robinsons. But let's say A. Robinson goes down, right? And Rodarius Williams is not quite ready to come back from his knee injury. I see him cutting and stuff, but just play this game with me. You can not have to move Darnay Holmes to the outside because what you can do is, because you saw Andrew Adams, start Andrew Adams, move Julian Love now, his natural position at corner, and now you have still a solid defensive backfield with Julian Love, Darnay Holmes in the slot, and now Andrew Adams as your safety, right? That's how I look at Julian Love. He's a jack of all trades, probably, I would say arguably maybe the most valuable player on defense, if you want to talk about it in terms of just overall utility-wise. I mean, McKinney is probably the number one player on defense that we're not talking about. I think I think the Giants, knock on wood, lose McKinney, and it's basically a wrap.
I would say the same thing about Adoree Jackson. I think Adoree Jackson's another guy that you can't lose on the defense because of the youth at corner and inexperience. You lose Adoree Jackson, we're in big trouble with that quarterback.
Well, like I said, I can live with Adoree by moving Julian over to his spot. I can't live with what I can't live with is not having McKinney on the field for mad long.
Oh yeah, if we lose McKinney, we're in deep trouble in the safety position.
If you guys thought the safety was good, get your 29 jerseys out because he's going to be a player that you guys are going to. If you haven't fallen in love with him already, like I have, I loved him when he was drafted. I couldn't wait till he got on the field. He really was. He had a difference maker, a difference making play a couple of years ago when he started. He was basically won the Oakland game for us with a pick six and. Basically roam the middle for us. And that's what you want to see. And now he looks even better in Wink Martindale's system. Oh, man, that guy gives me goosebumps talking about him. Him, Kayvon Thibodeau, Joe Jolari. There are a lot of players on defense that I'm excited about. Not the same on offense.
The defense gets me more excited too. And I'm glad that you brought that up about Julian Love because I agree with you. I think Love gets a little bit more hate than the guy deserves. I mean, when it comes to open field tackling, Julian Love is one of the best on this team by far. That guy, when the tackle needs to be made, and you see how many times we've missed tackles over the years.
Right.
Julian Love is one of our best short tacklers when it comes to that department, which is one of the most important things you need to do on defense.
I think they need to sign him because if he has a good year,
I would sign him. I would sign him to an extension. Nothing's too big.
right now. I would sign him right now because if you don't, his value is just going to go next year. Right?
Well,
If he has a season that we think that you and I, Jeff, think he's going to have, which is a pretty solid year, right? And now you're going to tell me that he's going to come back and be like, yeah, I'm going to take a hometown discount. No, not at all.
well, here's the problem with that, Adam, is that I think they have to think about McKinney eventually getting an extension, and they did draft Dane Belton in the third round. Plus, they have Yusef Corker, who they might like, so they might believe that Julian Love could be expendable after this year, and they could just plug in a guy like Belton or Yusef Corker in that position, or if they think Andrew Adams is a guy they could come into. So I really believe I would keep Love because I think you cannot get rid of a player as versatile as Julian Love. I think he's perfect for this type of defense, but I just think they might believe him to be expendable because of the guys that they brought in behind him, and if they really believe in their potential, like a Belton and a Yusef Corker and an Adams, plus McKinney being due an extension, they might just believe that they're going to try to let Love play out this year. Hopefully he has a good season, and then maybe they could get themselves a compensatory pick at the end of the season. Though I would love to be on this team. No, pun intended there, but yeah, I just think that's the route they're going to go.
I hope not. I mean, I know they signed Dane Belton, and you want to keep that guy around, and he's part of the draft class. But these are the tough decisions you're going to have to make because what do I want to lose Yusef Corker? I do not. But will we have to hide a guy and things like that? This is where it really comes down to, and I really do believe that the Giants are headed in the right direction with some of their young players. Let's hope they pan out now, right? Because a lot of the guys that we're talking about now, Jones, Barkley, Julian Love, they may or may not be on the team next year due to their contract, and you can't pay every one of them. So I need guys who are going to come in behind them, Dane Belton of the world, and kind of give me that thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to need some of these young guys to be able to step up and show what they can do in this team. I mean, that's what we're looking forward to. That's the one thing as Giants fans we should be looking forward to the most. I know we all want to win. I know we all want to have a good season and maybe make the playoffs and have some type of run. But when you're looking for, especially with a rebuilding team, you're looking for young players to come in and give ourselves an impact and potentially be building blocks for this team going forward. You want to establish yourself an identity on offense and defense, something that we have not had for the past few seasons. You want to be able to build a foundation of veterans as well as young players going forward and players that you could say are part of this core moving forward into not just this year, but 2023 and beyond. That's what you're looking for in terms of your New York Giants team, and that's why you have to have a full evaluation of the young players with this team as well as the veterans and players that weren't drafted by by this regime. You have to, go through the full evaluation and see who's going to be a part of the future. Maybe Julian Love has a good season, and maybe Joe Shea goes into the offseason and be like, you know what? I really like what Julian Love can bring to this team. I love his versatility. I'm going to try to sign this guy to an extension with the type of money we have. And then, like you said, I apologize if I'm going a long tangent, but I mean, there's a lot of decisions on this team that are going to have to be made. You're going to have to decide if you don't restructure. Leonard Williams could be a guy that could be a cut candidate. I wouldn't cut him because I still think he could be a player that you could take advantage of his skill set. He could be a guy that could be a cut candidate. Kenny Golladay, he could be a cut candidate. Kadarius Toney, maybe if the regime still doesn't believe in this guy and he can stay healthy, he could be on the outs. Sterling Shepard, longest tenure Giant, he could be on the outs and could be gone. He's a free agent. Saquon Barkley, Darius Slayton, Daniel Jones, Dexter Lawrence, you picked up his fifth-year option. You don't know if this guy could still be part of the long-term plans. There are so many people that you are evaluating on this team going forward, and that's including the rookies, that's going to be a telling sign of what you're going to do going into the next offseason. And that's what we all should be looking forward to seeing is how these young players, these rookies, second-year, third-year players are going to look going into this new regime, this new offensive and defensive schemes going forward, and what players are pretty much going to be part of this core. And it should not just be all about winning in 2021-22 because we saw what happened in 2016.
Shit.
What?
Breaking news. Andre Miller broke his forearm.
Shit. The rookie? Fuck.
Bobby
Well,
Skinner was having a good camp as a UDFA out of Maine, working with the first team. Not sure the timetable on his return. Bye. That fucking sucks. Breaking news.
well, well. That just opened the
It's
door for
and
Austin
so
Allen.
it begins. And so it begins.
Yep.
The
Well,
part
there's
the
our third player we've already lost, and third
look
rookie.
for the Giants to probably bring in like an Eric Ebron because if they had the off the line, they brought in Eric Smith already, right? So obviously they only lost one guy in the offensive line, and they haven't had much turnover there. So they have to bring in somebody now because they have not enough bodies to even field a team. So for me, this is what I'm talking about. The back end of the roster, that guy, oh God, that stinks because Jeremiah Hall apparently stepped up with the ones now, is having a decent camp. So this is what I'm talking about. These little injuries are going to be the bane of an existence, especially when you're relying on such a young team, such a young core of players that don't know how to deal with adversity, right? Like that's what I'm talking about. Young guys, there's two things that the young guys do. They either have no cares because they've never lost really before, so they don't know what it's like to lose in the NFL. And then you have the guys who, are going to take it to heart. You know what I mean? And Joe Shane values homegrown talent.
Tough. That's tough to hear. I hate hearing. I apologize for interrupting, but I hate hearing about kids that are actually showing something in camp, especially a rookie.
Yeah, I wanted them to get their first game at least. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get
That's
to the
what
first
feels so
game.
horrible about Marcus McKay. The guy didn't even like get a chance to show what more he could do. He gets hurt in a freaking scrimmage.
But this is what I'm talking about. These are bad. These are our backup players, okay, that we hope that are going to play some type of role in our team, whether it was special teams or not. Andre Miller was getting reps with the ones. Now you're taking him out of the game. You already have – look at this tight end room, okay? Look at this tight end room. Jordan Atkins has been an absolute bum. Ricky Seals-Jones, he's MIA. If you can find the milk box that he's on, then please send it to me, right? So your four healthy tight ends right now are Jordan Akins, Daniel Bellinger, Chris Myrick, and Austin Allen. Okay, right now. You have 7 on the roster. 2 of them are not playing, and we don't know what's going to happen when the games happen, when you get banged up. Because honestly, folks, you're going to get banged up in these games. That's what happens. It's how your body responds from being banged up. Getting hit in a game is a lot different than getting hit in practice. You know what I mean? Guys roll ankles, things happen. This is going to be But I agree with you on Joe Shane valuing his homegrown talent. Resigning our own guys after 4 years.
It's about time we do that. We've only done it with 2 players in the last 10 years.
Julian Love isn't his guy. You know what I'm saying? So, Leonard Williams isn't his guy. And trust me, if the Giants are in a mode where, let's say they win 7 games and they're in the top 12, and there's a quarterback they can have, some of these guys will not be on this team, and you should start having a fire. If come trade deadline, the Giants are 3-5 or 3-7 or whatever the trade deadline is, right? I think it's week 10 is when it ends. If you're not in the playoff hunt, start getting rid of guys. And
the first guy I'm selling is Saquon Barkley. If we're not a good team, I am getting Barkley's value as high as possible. We all love Barkley, but we have to trade him because I don't know. Let's just signing him to a contract. He's got to
get more assets so that you can trade up to get whatever quarterback you deem, right? If that's what you want. Because to me, I'm thinking 2024 is when the Giants will be lock and step, ready to go to compete for not only the playoffs, but probably a contender, right? Because I think you need –
But
you need the new face of the franchise, especially going forward. You still need offensive line depth. You're still probably going to need a couple guys on the line because Feliciano, I want a regular center. I love Nick Gates, but
I don't know if you heard what he did in practice, but apparently he was like kneeing Tate Crowder and Tam Brown. There apparently was a major scuffle that happened in practice, and it was involving Feliciano.
And Bobby Johnson, the O-line coach, is pushing our defensive players like, not having it, buddy. Don't Mark Colombo this shit. You need to come in there and establish your ground. You need to be higher than that. I understand about fighting. I love the fight. I love, the veracity to which it happens. But if you're gonna play dirty, right, and you're gonna be dirty, like, guess what? You don't need to see fights on fields. That's how you get guys ejected from games and possibly eject. That's how you lose games. Look at what happened when Kadarius Toney got off the field in that Cowboy game.
Yep.
Look what happened when Daniel Jones got injured in that Cowboy. You start to be a team where teams start to get a little bit more of an edge. You don't want – what I've learned in football is this. Don't give any more team any more motivation than they already need. Don't do it. Don't be that team that they know Joe Feliciano is going to be a hothead and start kneeing people because they're going to start coming at you. And that takes away from the entire game.
Penalties on your team, yeah.
Exactly. And I don't care that I want to see more of the Kadarius Toney stand up for a guy when a guy gets knocked down. I don't mind that. I encourage it. But if you start to go out and be dirty, right, like you're saying, Joe Feliciano needs Tank Crowder. That's who you said, Joe Feliciano?
John right? Feliciano, I think. I don't know if it was Crowder or Cam Brown. It was one of the two of them.
Either way, I know that he's known to be somewhat dirty, right? That's not good. You want an edge, but you don't want to go over the edge where you're losing your center because he's a dickwipe, right? And he gets kicked out of the game, and now we have Jamil Douglas rolling freaking passes back to Daniel Jones, who's already having a tough day as it is. Now you make it even tougher on the kid. He's getting sacked and fumbled, and those are the type of shit that can derail games for you.
But Adam, can I go back to one of the points you just made a little bit before about the fact that Joe Shane is probably going to want to re-sign a bunch of his guys that he brings in? And I don't 100% love that philosophy when some GMs do that, because if you still have talent that's young enough, that's part of the old regime, and is still good and can be and help out your future of your team, you keep those guys. I don't care if you didn't draft them or you didn't sign them. You keep them if they're good enough to be part of that core. And that's why I say, like a Julian Love, if you think he's good enough and he's part of your team, you think he has a future, sign him. If you think Barkley has a future, sign him.
Here's the thing, though. Here's where economics come into play here. And what I mean by that is, we can't sign everybody, right? So if it's Barkley, Love, Jones, Leo on the table, which I think Leo has one more season, if I'm not correct. I could be wrong.
I think he does, yeah. I think next year is his last year on his contract.
I could be mistaken. If he is up for re-signing, like Miz said this year, you got a lot of money to play with, but you got to bring back guys that you know are going to be here. Like Barkley, can I replace him? Yes. Cheaper as well.
Dexter Lawrence as well as a free agent.
Daniel Jones, can I replace him? Yes, I can. With probably a guy who's probably coming out as a better prospect. And that's another thing I want to say to people. You can't judge a quarterback now. You can't be like, well, Daniel Jones is better than said quarterback. Yes, obviously he is. What you have to do is evaluate when he came out, what were the grades on him. If this guy has a 75 and Daniel Jones is a 70, well, then guess what? The guy with the 75 is a better prospect coming out. Will that translate to better production? You're hoping. But that's how you have to evaluate play. Because a lot of guys are like, oh, Malik Willis is not as good as Daniel Jones. How do you know? They were evaluated at the same grade level on NFL.com by Lance Zierlein. I'm not saying that's the end-all, be-all. But if some people have the same grade on a guy, that's how you evaluate. You don't evaluate what a guy has done for you because you don't know that. You hope, you project, and you hope that he can make that transition. Really, and
I agree. You can't evaluate what somebody does in college because some player could be great in college and they can come into the NFL and just not be the same guy, i.e., a Tim Tebow.
Right, but what you look at is what his grade was coming out. Daniel Jones was across the spectrum of grades. He was a 5th-round pick, 2nd-round pick, 1st-round pick. Shouldn't be picked in the top 10, whatever. Right. So that's why I think it's funny. That's why I think it's funny that all these teams now are like, oh, Daniel Jones is going to be good now because none of these guys liked him when he was coming out. Nobody, not one person.
Because they looked at what Brian Daboll and Shea Tierney did for Josh Allen and the fact that Josh Allen we all know Josh Allen has a lot more talent. What's going on, Mac? How you doing, bro?
Mac, but that's what I'm saying is that when you see these media types, what's up, my man, Mac? How you doing? When I see these media types going, well, now I want to, like Kurt Warner, well, Daniel Jones is going to win with a Super Bowl with Brian Daboll. What? Hello? What is going on here? You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here? And I also look at it financially. We just talked about economics, right? Who are you going to bring back? Well, guess what? If Daniel Jones has a breakout season, you ain't bringing none of those guys back. I'm sorry. You're just not. Because you're going to have to pay him whatever he commands. So for me, financially, it makes more sense to go after the young guy and put Tyrod in, who, by the way, has looked a lot better than Daniel Jones. Just
the
saying.
crowd is currently I just saw like the crowd was currently groaning because Kadarius Toney dropped back-to-back passes. So
who cares?
Practice. I mean, I'm just Giants.
You know what I mean?
Crowd. You know what the Giants fan base is like. Practice.
Listen, if you're gonna forgive Daniel Jones and all his flaws, I can, give it up for Tony. Now, what is disconcerting to what is really is concerning to me is this. We've gone from practice to practice. Daniel Jones, out of 10 practices, had 2 good days. 2 good days. 2 good days. Yet, I'm the bad guy for entertaining the fact that he might be average. I'm just saying.
Well, you have your opinion, and you're allowed to have your opinion. You're right now. You're not looking stupid when it comes to your opinion. You look right. You look accurate.
And I'm not trying. And I want to say this to people. I'm not trying to look right. I'm just trying to point out to you, when you watch football, you can't just fall in love with a player because he's on your team. You've got to really examine his flaws. Because, like I said to somebody at the Fan Fest, football is a microcosm of life, right?
Yep.
And you're constantly evaluated at your job, on your social media nowadays, judging, evaluation, whatever you want to call it, right? Everyone's critical of whatever. And everyone has a bar that they want to set for you, right? And they want to be like, well, is he good? Is he good? Your eyes don't lie to you.
Yeah.
The tape doesn't lie. This guy, yes, has he flashed? Yes, but he's done more average stuff than carry his team. And that is not because I'm a hater. That is what the tape is saying, right? Look at what the narrative has been for this guy. This guy was maligned, one, mostly because everybody hated Dave Gettleman, but he was a maligned quarterback coming out no matter what. Nobody really was like, yeah, let's draft Daniel Jones, right? Top 6. It was the best of the bunch. It's like what they say about, taking the best of the bunch. You find something that's great, but it's not the pick of the litter, but it's the best at the time. You're gonna purchase it, right? So, so for me, that's what's happening. But now everyone wants to get on a bandwagon, so they're not wrong if Brian Daboll changes this guy around. They all want to be like, "See, I said it here first."
That's the biggest problem with this fan base right now is that everybody's just trying to prove that they're right and they're wrong. And I actually based this off. And I apologize for interrupting.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I've noticed a lot of these fans now, I think the younger fans especially, I think there's a difference between fans and fanatics. I think fanatics are just going to be those types of fans that they're going to be all positive, or super negative, no matter what, and they're just never going to want to hear any criticism or any, praise if something good or bad happens. They're just going to stick to their laurels no matter what. A fan of a team will always be openly honest, whether it's right or wrong, but it's your valid opinion on your team and your players on the team. And I think that's when something is getting lost with this fan base at times. I think
you're right.
It's because some fans are just afraid to be openly critical or openly praise a team and a player, and they're too busy just trying to get over with their own ego when it comes to everything, and they're just afraid to admit when they're wrong. And that's
I hear you there because I had a friend whose mom loved this friend to death, whose mom was like that, right? Her son, he's a great guy. We're long-time friends, and I'm sure he would tell you the same thing. He'd go out and break a window, or go throw, stones at cars and things like that. Basically mischievous stuff, right? Then they would be confronted by the parents that they were doing that stuff with, right? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the mom was like, "That's not my kid," but you got caught in the act. Yeah, it was him, but no, it can't be him. I didn't raise him like that. And I think that's how it is with Jones. Is we don't want to see the bad things about it. Look, Unpopular Sports. It's not about hating Daniel Jones. It's about being critical of his play on the field. I hope Jones proves people like me and Adam wrong, but I don't think he will. And
that's all you guys have been saying this whole time. That's why I understand where you're coming from.
Right.
Both of you guys.
Right.
And everybody else offended too.
If we're proven right, that's not good. That's not what we want. We don't want to see him fail. But we want to point out that it's not rainbows and butterflies with this kid, because guess what? If you can laugh about Sterling Shepard being Riggs, right, and getting injured, then we can be able to do this. Sterling Shepard is probably the second most talented receiver on our team. but he's injured. And if he's injured every year, we have to talk about what is his issue, what his flaws are. Okay,
Yeah.
Just like Saquon Barkley, he's not a perfect prospect, but his flaw is he doesn't do well with the third down blitz pickup, and he also sometimes is hesitant in the hole. Those are just facts that we have to talk about, and it's up to Saquon Barkley to prove the guys who are saying this wrong. I'm not hating Daniel Jones is like, just beating the guy down every time I can. Now, don't get me wrong, I laugh about his foils. Right. But I'm not trying to hate Daniel Jones. I'm just trying to bring light to what I see and why I believe that he is not the guy to get us forward.
Basically, what you and NYG and Authentic and anybody that's not a huge fan of Daniel Jones is you want to see the guy succeed. You hope he can succeed, but you're being honest about what you see on the field, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's what some fans misguided about it, like your opinions, is that everybody just wants to be, like you said, super positive, super optimistic. Everything is wonderful with our players. We're going to be in the Super Bowl, blah, 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 blah. That's just not the reality of football. It's not the reality of life. You're going to have ups and downs. You got to be openly honest.
Here are the exact reasons why this is not an exact science, all right? But we can tell when a player is good or bad. Because when you look at a guy like Russell Wilson or Nick Chubb, those guys, if you redrafted now, would not be picked where they're picked, right? With the production that you got from them, right? If you redrafted 2019 draft right now, Daniel Jones would not be picked in the top 10, okay? That's how it is because of the narrative is. And this is why this is not an exact science, because people missed on Russell Wilson. People missed on Nick Chubb. They missed on these guys, which probably should have been higher up guys, but because the guys who do this for a living missed out on them, you think that we're going to – that these guys who are now not in the business, no. All I'm saying is your eyes don't lie to you. Your brain does. Your brain can manipulate you in ways that can be debilitating. And I'm not saying anything bad. All I'm saying is if your brain wants to believe Daniel Jones is going to be good, even though he's bad, you'll put that narrative in your head no matter what. Because that's what I did with Dave Brown when I was 13 years old. And I was in debates with Cowboy fans like, Dave Brown's not bad. Deep down in my heart, Dave Brown was caca. But he was on my team, so I had to defend him. And I feel like what happens is we take these guys to heart because, we learn about them. We learn about Barkley and the good stuff he does with charity and Daniel Jones and the things he does with his golf tournament. By the way, folks, just put this in your head. Our quarterback is a professional cornhole player.
Yep.
Just throwing that out.
Daniel Jones playing a bunch of cornhole. He's pretty good at it.
He had the cornball playing cornhole.
Cornball doing the cornhole. If you guys
if he's doing cornhole now and already has a second career, what do you think about his NFL career? Okay, that's all I'm saying. It's like we're mad at Kadarius Toney for being a rapper, but we don't want to be mad at Daniel Jones for being a cornhole player.
It's such a stupid narrative sometimes.
I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm just saying.
But I mean, you just said it right there. Everybody always gets hyped out about the draft and everything every year about like this player's going to be great. This player's going to be great. He's going to suck because of what he did in this. The NFL is the NFL is a crapshoot, and the NFL draft is a crapshoot. You don't know what these guys are going to do. You don't know how these guys are going to play. You don't know if they're going to stay healthy or not.
You said
everything
it, right?
is such a crapshoot, and that's what people. That's the problem, Adam, that people forget about when it comes to everything here. Everything is a crapshoot when it comes to the NFL and every sport
because of they're humans. Because we're dealing with human entities, right?
Because you don't know, You don't know what a player's going to do. You don't know if they're put in the right situation or the wrong situation where a player could be really talented, but he's put in a shitty situation. You can't get the most out of him. Or players that's maybe not as talented is put in a good situation where he can get the most out of, like maybe not as much talent, but you can get the most out of what the kid has. So, I mean, sometimes it has to do with that. Sometimes it's injury luck. Sometimes a player's able to overcome it. You don't really know. The NFL, that's what makes the NFL so great, and because it's the complete unknown with everything. You don't know until the new season comes around and what players are like coming out of the draft. I apologize to keep going on, but it just pisses me off so much when I see this stuff on Twitter.
Here. I know that's funny, NYG. I like playing cornhole too, but I'm just saying he's a professional cornhole player.
I love cornhole.
And maybe he should stick to one sport before trying to do another, right? That's all I'm saying. But my point is, that we were talking about is like, these are human beings that we're talking about that we deal with, right? They have families, wives, lives, all that stuff goes on. And I think we tend to forget that we draft a guy and we hope that he's going to be good, because in Madden, when we draft a guy, he's a 99 and we can up his attributes and do whatever. Humans, you can up your attributes in a way, but you can't measure a guy's heart, determination, or talent. Sometimes all three come together and you get a guy like Peyton Manning. Sometimes you get a guy like Chase Blackburn, who has more heart than talent, but his talent kind of gets him to where he is. And then you got guys like Aaron Curry and Jamarcus Russell, who have all the talent in the world, but no damn heart. You know what I mean? So Trent Richardson, guys like that. The reason I bring this up is that these are what I'm talking about when it comes to the actual playing of teams, the actual happenings that teams have. You know what I mean? You can't just say to a guy that Daniel Jones is going to be shake his funk because you have Brian Daboll there. No, you hope that he's a serviceable, competent guy. That's what you hope. You want him to be competent. You have to go through the factors of life where, hey, is he going to be number one? Will he be able to do these things? Has he done those things? No, he has not. And those are what I'm talking about. The individualism, like, for example, Barkley. We hope he has a good year, but if he goes out in Tennessee and tweaks a hamstring or something, and his season is lost, then we're back to the same old Saquon Barkley we've seen the last 2 years.
Yep, absolutely.
But I know that Saquon Barkley is a good player. There is no doubt in my mind. I don't have to second guess and hold out hope and say, well, give this excuse and that excuse and this excuse. No, because I know that for a fact Saquon Barkley is good when healthy.
And I mean, that's, I think, one of the things that get lost is that people are sometimes afraid to be honest about something. And if you be honest with a certain player, especially when it comes to like your football team with quarterbacks, if you say something that doesn't quote unquote fit the narrative and like you're being a little bit negative, you're going to get slammed for it and everybody's going to call you a hater and like you're not a fan, blah, 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 blah. You're allowed to have your opinion on it. And in some of the ways and some of the things you see and say, it's valid. That's why, like, when you, NYG, Authentic, and anybody else that has been a detractor of Daniel Jones and have not been 100% behind the guy in terms of his play on the field, not saying you don't like him, but what you see on the field, you have to understand where they're coming from and you have to respect their opinion because what they say has some validity to it until this guy can go out there and show it on the field. And that's where some fans, and that's why I go with the difference between fans and fanatics, is that some fanatics they can't be honest with their team, and they have to be overly negative and think the sky's falling all the time, or they have to be overly positive where no matter what you say, the team is going to go 12-5, 13-4, we're going to go to the playoffs, we're going to go to the Super Bowl no matter what. You can't have that mindset. You have to be honest with everybody on the team, especially if you're a content creator or if you're a guy that does research with sports. You have to be openly honest with your team. You can't just be a fanboy. You have to be critical with your team and be honest with your team. If a player is not meeting the type of expectations you're expecting of them, but at the same time, you're going to support them and you're going to hope that they can turn it around and be the type of player that you think they could be. So it's like a very twisted type of spectrum when it comes to that. And I mean, if I'm coming off like, if my words are not like resonating with everybody, I apologize, but that's where I think we get lost as a fan base, is that we need to be openly honest with our teams. We need to be openly honest with our players, negatively and positively. But at the same time, we have to hope that they can turn it around and hope that they can, be the type of players that we hope they can be going forward.
Look at it like this, right? The players need critical assessment. They need it. Otherwise, you're not going to know if you're good or bad, right?
Absolutely. They need competition too, Adam. They need guys that are going to push them.
You need guys like me who are going to say, "Hey, you suck. Get better. Get better at your job. You want to prove to me that you're good." Like Eli Manning, love him or hate him, right? He wasn't always the best, but what I do know when I had Eli Manning is I had a chance in games. I had a chance. There was a chance to win. I did not panic when he had the ball inside 2 minutes to go.
Yep.
I don't have that confidence with Daniel. So prove it to me. So prove it to me. Make me a believer. Make me a Daniel Jones believer. Because right now, it's not that I don't necessarily quote unquote believe in him. I just don't see the traits that want me to keep wasting more time trying to build something for a guy that's not going to be here in 3 or 4 years. Right? If you
And
think in
that's
4 years, I mean, the guy is 25, right now, which is young for a quarterback. Okay,
yes.
he's developed on 3 different staffs. In 3 different staffs, the same problem has been what? Daniel Jones. Okay, Shermer's staff, he was there. He was drafted for Shermer's staff. Shermer's gone. He had Jason Garrett. It's Jason Garrett's problem. The next year, they're supposed to be like Daniel Jones was supposed to get better. He got worse in the system, and now he's in another system where it's more complicated than all the other 2 systems he's been in. And now you're trying to tell me that he's going to now flourish with this. With, by the way, the receivers don't have set timing routes. It's kind of like just get off the line.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's the one reason why I'm so happy that they're going to play these guys. What the timing with the quarterback and his receivers is so paramount for the success. Like when you have that synergy between them, and I mean, we've all seen it. Kenny Golladay has probably had one good practice so far out of all of them. Great practice. Otherwise, him and Daniel Jones look like they have no consistent synergy between one another. Their chemistry looks as off can be. Tony and Jones need to get better. I mean, their chemistry is a little bit better, but they need to work on it more. It takes sometimes. It takes sometimes a quarterback to get chemistry and timing with his wide receivers, tight ends, and etc. Like what, 8, 9, 10 games throughout a season, and sometimes it takes years of being on the field, running routes, learning like where a guy's going to be on the field. It takes a lot of time for players to develop that type of chemistry to like know where a guy's going to be at all times on the field. And with like, you're expecting these guys to automatically go in there and just snap of a finger and they're going to be able to just be right on the same page all the time when we know for a fact that's not going to happen at the beginning of the season, especially when you're learning a new scheme, new plays, new routes, new concepts, everything else, and you're also trying to go with players that have been inconsistent in terms of their health on and off the field. So,
no, I hear you. That's why I'm a little skeptical about the Tennessee game coming out, because you have a team that's going to be buttoned up in terms of what they know and how they know it, right? Yeah, sure, they lost A.J. Brown, but the offense is going to stay the same. You know what I mean? It's not like they're trading, a whole new system in and bringing a whole new system out. No, it's going to be roughly the same offense. And let's be honest, I already said this to people last time. We don't like Tannehill, but his numbers are better with Derrick Henry in the backfield than they are. He had 3 interceptions when Derrick Henry was on the field. He had 11 interceptions with him off the field. Okay, so even though they won 9 games without Derrick Henry in the lineup, and he almost had 1,000 yards, by the way, after not playing 9 games, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I mean by when I go down the list and you're reading these guys, don't disrespect the other team. Don't give them fuel to the fire because we as Giant fans are like, Tennessee, blah, blah, blah. No, don't do that. Just go in there and say, you know what? Hopefully we go in to win this game. Let's see where the chips fall, and that's it. Don't be like, well, we're going to beat them. I'm not worried about Tennessee, or Tennessee doesn't scare me, or we have a chance to beat them. Yeah, this is the NFL. The Browns can beat anybody, or the Jags can beat anybody any given Sunday. Don't give me a break. All I'm trying to say is that coaching matters. Mike Vrabel is a better coach right now than Brian Daboll, and that's not biased. That's not hating. That's fact.
He's more proven in the league, and right now Tannehill is proven more in the NFL than what's going on, Mitch. How you doing, bro? And hey. Tannehill is proven more in the NFL so far than Daniel Jones. That's just a proven fact. And
I look at it like this, right? You have to look at resume and what guys have done, correct? So we laugh at Ryan Tannehill, but he's a competent quarterback. It's not like we're going in there playing Gardner Minshew, okay? Not like we would have a chance. But it's not like we're going in there playing a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance, a guy that hasn't played anything. We got a guy who understands concepts in defense. You know what I mean? Like, yes, our defense is going to be ferocious, but that's also Tannehill. Maybe he changes the play. Maybe they go back and make adjustments. Maybe they can figure things out. Maybe they start to see tendencies with Aaron Robinson. You know what I mean? That normally you don't see, because there's a lot of young guys on this team that are going to get baptism by fire. And when that happens, sometimes their mistakes are going to cost us.
Yeah, that's the thing you have to think about is that we have a lot of young players on this team, including rookies, And rookies don't all just click immediately and just become good players all of a sudden. It takes time for a rookie to get adjusted to the NFL. Sometimes it takes a full season. So I mean, that's why, like, you have to temper your expectations a little bit with this team, and especially when it comes to I know we all think the offensive line is going to be better, but it takes a time. How long does it take an offensive line, Adam, to gel together during a season? Like, what, half a season sometimes,
Yes.
maybe longer?
Well,
Look at the Chiefs. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs last year. Look at them last year. They were a disaster of an offensive line at the beginning of the season. People are talking about the Chiefs as being a team like, what the hell happened to this team? Patrick Mahomes is turning it all over the place. Like, you have to – because the Chiefs' offensive line didn't gel because they brought in a whole bunch of new players, drafted players. They brought in Orlando Brown. It took time for that offensive line to gel, and when they finally started to play as a unit, Patrick Mahomes' turnovers went down. The Chiefs' offense started to look a lot better.
Big Blue in the Bronx, my man.
What's going on, Alex? How you doing, bro? If you haven't already, sub up to Big Blue in the Bronx. He does excellent work with the Giants and the Yankees. So
or Big Blue,
check his channel out.
In Brooklyn.
Big Blue in Brooklyn, exactly. But that's the thing that people are misconcepting is that they think that some of these things are just going to come together immediately, and we're going to become a great team all of a sudden. It takes time for things to gel. The offensive line is going to take time. Right.
Will Hernandez said it.
Become great.
Will Hernandez said it a few years ago when he was talking. He was he was saying that it takes time for us to gel, and I haven't played with Nate Solder, and playing with Andrew Thomas is going to take some time because you need to learn the weaknesses of your guard, right? So, for example, Andrew Thomas, this is why people don't understand how good Andrew Thomas is. He's had a different left guard every year that he's played in the NFL.
It's ridiculous.
Okay? They went with Will Hernandez, Shane Lemieux, and then last year he had, I don't even know who he had over there. I forget who he had.
He had Bredesen, he had
he had a different and he still handled his man.
Billy Price, he had Matt Skura.
Right. Had, so, and now Gates. I feel bad for Golowinski because Golowinski is playing with a rookie, so he's going to have to eat all the mistakes that Evan Neal makes, right? So if he's covering Evan Neal's ass, because Bud Dupree or whoever, Harold Landry is beating down on him, or Brian Burns is beating him up, that might give up something to Justin Simmons or another defensive tackle who might be coming in. By the way, Jordan Davis is looking like an absolute beast out there on the practice field.
He looks really
I don't want people to be like, oh, we're going to walk over this Eagle team because, boy, if you I don't even want to talk about them. They're that's how good their
defensive line looks great. Their pass rush could be scary over the years.
So we'll see
how good they can be.
Now, Alex in the Bronx says, I love the fight, not a fan of Bobby Johnson getting involved. I don't necessarily love the fight of how it happened. It was because you were being dirty. That doesn't bode well. If it's one thing if a guy hits your guy and knocks him over or something like that, but if you're instigating it by kneeing people in the chest and shit, nah, man, that ain't cool. Because guess what? Like I said before, don't give any more motivation to the other team. Now they went in there, you were beating their ass, but now you're sticking it to them, or you're being dirty, right? Now you're being a hot dog. I went to a party this weekend, right? And this kid was being a hot dog around all these little kids because he was beating all the young kids up. All of a sudden, the adults come in, and now we're playing, and the kid can't dominate more. So I'm like, don't hot dog, because guess what? You never know who's coming in behind you, who might say, all right, you want a hot dog? We'll show you a lesson, right? Exactly. So that's what I mean. Bobby Johnson getting involved is absolutely unacceptable as a coach. I will not condone that because Mark Colombo got into fights with people. And like I said, I like the feistiness. I want it to happen where, Tavon Thibodeau. It has to be
controlled.
Tavon Thibodeau is frustrated because Evan Neal just beat him and threw him to the ground. And you got up in his face and start shoving, and then the fight goes off. That's what I'd rather have happen than you, John Feliciano, decide, oh, I'm going to be a dirtbag and, knee my own teammate in the gut because that's funny. Because I'm called dirtbag. Like, that's not, give me a break.
I don't love hearing that either. I really don't, because
are we assholes or are we fucking friends?
Because at the same time, it's not something you want to hear them doing to teammates. And then what happens if, God forbid, it happens during a game situation where somebody, beats John Feliciano a play and he gets pissed off about it. He decides to knee a defender, and then we get a 15-yard penalty, and it ends up being a reason we lose a game. Then
we lost because our starting.
And this is a veteran too.
our starting center gets out of the game, and then Jamil Douglas, who hasn't played center in his life, fucking does a rollback to whoever the quarterback is at this time, and the quarterback is sacked. Most likely,
And people are relying on Nick Gates. Look, we all love Nick Gates. We all want Nick Gates to get back on field. But don't put too much expectations on Nick Gates. We just want to hope that this guy is going to be able to recover 100% and even have a shot to make it back to the field. But don't think that this guy is automatically going to just come right back in and be our starting center or be a key piece of this offensive line.
Well,
whatever
even
we
if
get
he
from
is,
Nick Gates this year is gravy.
Even if he is our starting
gravy.
center. Even if he is our starting center, I still want to draft a guy and develop because, like NYG22 said in the chat, we need to develop our players. We haven't developed anybody.
And how do you feel about this one right here? What Alex said, Shane Lemieux as a possible long-term center because he has gotten snaps. As
yes, I agree with that. That's one of my thought processes going in. I wouldn't mind him being the long-term center, but like I told Alex when I was sitting next to him, I said you can't make him a center now. You need to do it during the year. Like he'll take reps at center throughout the year. So he has a year under his belt of looking at center, right? He's never played center right now.
I think he has taken reps at center during his rookie year as well, where he did maybe he primarily
I know it was at Oregon. I know at Oregon he did
snaps at center. Yeah. So he does have experience playing center. And I think Bredesen has also been taking snaps at center.
I wouldn't mind moving Shane Lemieux there. And then what you could do is put in Josh Azudu. Again, right now, if you do that, though, again, you're giving up experience because they haven't seen everything. I'm saying, if you have John Feliciano right now, get Shane Lemieux ready because if John Feliciano goes down, which it already looks like he might be injury prone. He was injury prone last year. He already is dehydrated this year. So if he goes down and you want to make a move that is a long-term move, I'm moving Shane Lemieux over because I'll move Shane Lemieux. I'll put in Jeff Azudu and say, let's go. This is our line for the next 5 years. Let's roll with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because is not going to. The only thing is, Azudu is here to replace Galowinski, but the problem is McKeithen was also that guy too, but now he's out. So it's going to be a long rehab process.
Put pressure on McKeithen to even if when he comes back next year, he's coming off a serious injury. What are you going to expect from a kid coming off an ACL? So he's already his growth has already been stunted because of this injury. And then Azudu, I think he's going to be the long-term left guard. I think he's pretty much was drafted, and because of the type of offensive line that Bobby Johnson wants to run, like more of that run heavy, power running type offensive line, which I think fits well with the Zudu's skill set. I think he's going to be the long-term left guard, and this could be our line going in long-term. I mean, I still am not giving up on Glowinski. I mean, maybe Glowinski plays really well, and you could give him another year or two on his contract. But I think that this will probably be what our offensive line hopefully is going in long-term. Maybe Lemieux is more of a backup, but Thomas, Azudu, Lemieux at center. If Glowinski's not the guy long-term, a draft pick at right guard, and then Neal is your center. I think you still want to have some veterans on that offensive line because what works out best for an offensive line is a good mixture of young players as well as veterans. I think you need to have that nice mixture of veterans and young players together because I think that's what you need for a good offensive line to mesh together going into the season. I mean, we pretty much want what the Dallas Cowboys have had. But the Dallas Cowboys drafted a bunch of first-round picks at the offensive line when they drafted Tyron Smith, they drafted Travis Fredericks, and they drafted Zach Martin, and they put together that very good offensive line over the course of 5-10 years until they started eventually breaking down. Obviously, Frederick had to retire due to that illness that he had. Martin has been having injury issues, and then Tyron Smith. But that's what you ideally want to do. But it's going to take time. This is not going to be an automatic 1-year fix.
Right. And listen, folks, I've got to get going. I've been on this thing. Jeff and I have been on this thing for well over 2 hours talking football, mostly Giants, but talking football nonetheless. I've got to get back to doing the duties of what a father does.
Are you cooking hot dogs?
No, hamburger.
I was going to say, you're throwing something on the grill.
Oh, yes. It's my lunch. So I have to feed myself and my kids, so I have to go. But thank you for joining me today on this day. Look out for the guys we talked about on Thursday night. Not Andrew Miller anymore because he's probably going to be out. But, Jeff, I appreciate you. Tell them where they can find your stuff.
Well, thank you very much first for having me on the channel today. Thank you, everybody, for contributing in the chat. Big Blue in the Bronx, Unpopular Sports Opinion, Big Pat Sports Talk. everybody else that's been in the chat today. And you can find me over at NYGJeffyT85, where I cover the New York Giants, Brooklyn Nets, New York Mets, WWE Wrestling, as well as when I co-host with my guy over here on my left, Adam Costas, as well as Zion Zenith and Mac the Giants fan for a premium take show every single Sunday. We've had a little bit of scheduling this past week. We might be doing a show sometime early this week, and we're going to be eventually moving our show to Saturdays for a little bit of an NFL preview as well as for the New York Giants. So thank you very much for having me on the stream. Everybody have a great rest of your Monday, and please, if you're in the tri-state area, stay cool and stay hydrated. It's a hot one today.
Yeah, people, stay in the AAC. Like he said, you can find me on Premium Takes. We do everything like he just mentioned: football, basketball, wrestling, everything under the sun. You can also find the Hurry Up Live, where I'll do little vignettes myself, or do something like this with Jeff, where we talk about topics across the NFL landscape. And then, of course, NFC East Roundup. Mac the Giant fan. I can't do it as well as him, but he and I have a show on Wednesday, 5:30s, previewing everything NFC East. So come get your fill of football with Premium Takes, the Hurry Up, and NFC East Roundup, all presented by the Hardcore Sports Network. So, people, if you like this, sub up and subscribe. I'm out. Have a good one. Enjoy the preseason game if I don't talk to you before then.
Everybody have a great rest of your day, everyone.